Roland was shoved quickly down the cross-section in the hallway, while his small private army supplied suppressing fire and placed themselves between him and the incoming threat. The gunfire, screams, and shouts of his men's orders drowned out the pain-filled cries of the wounded left behind. As his men set up a defensive line, Roland creeped an eye to the corner of the wall. His men were positioned well and fired a suppression barrage into the void of darkness at the end of the hall. His men slowly stopped firing their guns, reloading quickly as they waited. The ringing in Roland's ears slowed in pitch. Only the low, echoing groans and whines of pain stayed.
I don't see anything.
A harsh whisper came from someone up front.
Either.
Another voice, from behind this time.
Stay calm. Cycle your visual spectrum. He has to be down there.
A commanding tone. The darkness at the end of the hall shifted and lengthened, staring back at Roland. Roland brought a shaking finger up to his ear, turning on his glass eye. The glass eye identified all of his men, including the wounded left in the darkness. Roland quickly cycled the glass eye into night vision mode. The darkness in the hall lifted into a greenish hue. Roland didn't want to. No, he couldn't believe his HUD. Even if the hall was empty, he knew their assailant was there. He cycled to the next visual spectrum. Nothing. The next, also nothing. He began to panic, cycling spectrums faster and faster. All of them revealed an empty hall, until one of the wounded men's vitals disappeared. He wasn't the only one to notice. A few of his men began to whisper amongst themselves. Another signal lost, followed quickly by another. The men at the front started to grow upset with each other, some wanting to rescue, others wanting to quit. Trouble was, the only way out was down the darkened hall.
Hold your position. Just wait until the second team gets...
The instruction was cut off by a gurgled scream. Another signal lost.
Son of a bitch! Are we just gonna let this happen?
A clearly stressed voice shouted from the rear line. Roland felt his stomach turn over on itself, his ears being invaded by the sound of ripping flesh and breaking bone. A harrowing scream followed, echoing down the hall, this time much closer. Roland looked down the hall. The night vision of the glass eye highlighted one of the wounded. The wounded man was looking up at something, invisible to Roland. Whatever was there held the wounded man's crushed forearm.
Roland, spare these men's lives. This ends in only one way.
A metallic voice reverberated from the darkness. Roland watched as the invisible assailant raised the wounded man high into the air. Horror ran through Roland's entire body, watching as the wounded man begged for his life while he was ripped open, chest to groin, blood and organs giving shape to the monster before them. Roland's horror turned into paralysis, the sight of this viscera-covered nightmare from his past.
It can't be here. They're supposed to be extinct.
Roland's thoughts trying to give him reassurance.
Bastard! Open fire!
The commanding tone from before yelled while he started firing. He was joined quickly by the rest of Roland's men. Roland stared as the armored man was jolted and reeled while his body was barraged with bullets. The entity refused to fall and grew unyielding as the onslaught continued. A soldier from the rear lines called out,
Enough of this.
while mounting a high-caliber rifle onto his barricade. Another soldier cried out, but it was too late. As a deafening roar cracked down the narrow hallway. Forced to clasp their ears, the soldiers became disoriented. As they fought for their senses to return, only Roland stayed focused on the thing before them. His petrified face reflected back in the newly cracked visor of the still-standing threat. This seemed to be the last annoyance the steel-plated man was willing to digest. It began taking steps forward. The gunfire resumed in panicking volleys. A hand grabbed Roland's collar, pulling him further into the hall and away. Roland struggled to get his feet up to the speed of his saviors. His sense of flight was forced to manifest as he started to sprint at full speed. It was no longer the sound of his men fighting behind them, but the echoes of death chasing them.
What is he?
The soldier in front of Roland asked with a winded voice. Roland didn't answer for fear that saying what it was would cause this last bastion to leave him. The soldier suddenly stopped, looking toward an airlock door.
I have an idea. Get that door open.
The soldier quickly slung his pack around and pulled out a demolition charge. Roland swiftly pushed the security code into the door. Alarms and an automated voice loudly announced their intentions. Roland withdrew into the airlock, standing next to the door. The soldier made his way back down the hall, placing the charge in between the bulkheads on the outer wall. Roland jumped as the soldier returned. The soldier quickly scrambled into the airlock, pulling and sealing the door behind him.
Get down! Cover your head!
Roland did as he was told. The room violently shook from the explosion, while lights and alarms blared about the rapid decompression. Roland and the soldier slowly stood up, the shaking of the ship stopping. Looking through the airlock door window, Roland watched bodies and debris drift by slowly. A loud sigh of relief left the soldier's lungs, scaring Roland. Roland looked at the soldier and couldn't help but smile. It quickly faded as he saw the fear in the soldier's eyes. 3 dull thumps had Roland slowly turning his head back to the window. Pressed to the glass was the mangled face of the commanding soldier.
Where's Desvonic, Roland?
A voice emanated from inside their glass eyes. Face was removed from the window and replaced with a finger and the penetrating glare of a cracked, pale blue visor. The room was eerily silent, only to be disturbed by the fractures of the window forming.
Suit up! Suit up!
The voice of the soldier was cut off by the horrific sound of glass snapping. Roland grabbed the nearest survival suit, the window giving in just as they snapped on their helmets. Roland stumbled to the floor, his legs failing him as the venting of the pressurized air was forcibly removed from their sanctuary. The soldier was less fortunate, tumbling forward and crashing in front of the door. An armored hand clenched the shattered window's edge, indenting the door's reinforced frame. Roland scurried backwards into the confined space with the normalizing atmosphere. The door screeched as its internal frame gave in to the pressure of the hand bearing weight on it. The lights in the room flickered on and off as the door was broken away from its locked position. An armored man stepped into the crevice between the door and the frame. The armored man reached down to the soldier on the floor, pushing his hand through the glass of the helmet like it wasn't even there. Roland sat frozen, watching the soldier be lifted into the air. The soldier released muffled screams, while he flailed uselessly to free himself. A very low and slow audible crunch permeated the room, with the soldier going limp. The soldier's body dropped to the floor, a pool of ichor pouring from the ruined helmet.
Where's Desvonic, Roland?
The modulated voice radiated with resentment.